It goes without saying that for you to be able to hack computers remotely over the internet, you need to have a good understanding of what the internet is and how does it work. A lot of people think that they know what the internet is, and if you go and ask anybody, somebody of your friends, your parents, your siblings, do you know what the internet is? Chances are they're gonna laugh back at you and they're gonna go, yeah, of course we know what the internet is. So, at the risk of sounding a little bit silly, I'm gonna ask you this. Do you know what the internet is? And how does it work? This is what this section is about. It's about understanding what the components of the internet are. So let's start by defining what the internet is. To put very simply, it's a global network of connected computers. So it quite literally is a whole bunch of computers all around the world that are connected to each other. Once we simplify this concept of what the internet is, anything attached to it, such as the concept of how hacking works, becomes simplified as well. This is how you start demystifying hacking. For a lot of people, hacking is sort of like this quote-unquote black art or mysterious magic. They don't know how it works and how does it happen. But once you understand that the big global network of computers, you start to understand that hacking is simply me accessing information on another computer elsewhere on the planet. You might be wondering, what do you mean by connected computers? Here's an article from The Guardian in 2013, and it says that damaged undersea internet cable causes widespread service disruption. Off the coast of Egypt, there was some damage in undersea internet cables, and this caused service disruption in some countries. So the internet is quite literally a whole bunch of cables, or at least part of it, is a whole bunch of big, massive undersea cables connecting continents and countries together. Here's another article, and it says that the US Navy was worried that Russia might be planning to cut the undersea cables that carry 95% of internet traffic. So internet is no longer this mystical big cloud that nobody knows where it is. Because a lot of people, when we're talking about the internet, they imagine that it's this cloud that's sitting somewhere and there's this whole bunch of data on it. But as a matter of fact, it's just this whole bunch of computers connected by cables, undersea cables, satellite, radio signals, so on and so forth. So when it comes to hacking remotely, when it comes to hacking a system over the internet or a computer over the internet, all what you're doing is you're trying to access information on that computer that is sitting remotely somewhere else. You're going through an undersea cable, you're going through a satellite, it really doesn't matter. If we want to think of it on a smaller scale, imagine that you are in your house and there are 3 or 4 different computers connected to your house router. This is a mini version of the internet. These computers that are in your house connected to the router here resembles the internet, and you can access information from one computer to another. This is what hacking basically is. It's as simple as that. Now, for hacking to happen, for you to be able to hack a system remotely, you need 4 main components. The first thing you need is an IP address. And don't worry if you don't know what this is, we're going to be explaining all of that. So the first thing you want is the IP address of the system you want to break into. 2, you want a running exposed service on that IP address or on that machine. 3, you want a vulnerability in the service that you can take advantage so that 4, you can exploit this vulnerability and gain remote control over the machine. So what's an IP address or an Internet Protocol address? We just said that the internet is a big global network of connected computers. These computers can be connected through cables, satellites, radio, etc. Now, for these computers to talk to each other, they each require a unique address. If somebody wants to send you mail, they would need certain criteria such as your name, your street address, your city, your postcode, and so on. And the same goes for computers who are on any network. For any computer on a network to talk to another computer on a network, it would need an IP address. And this, of course, applies to the internet because the internet, like we said, is this huge, massive network. So put simply, an IP address is a unique address for every computer on a network that wants to talk to another computer. And they have a specific form. The form is number.number.number.number. And the number could be anything from 1 to 255. Let's take the example of these two computers on the network. On the left-hand side, you have a computer with the IP address of 192.168.1.1, and on the right-hand side, you have another computer with the address of 192.168.1.112. These are the IP addresses that are associated to these two different computers, and these are the IP addresses that these computers use when they want to communicate to each other. So if, for example, the computer on the left-hand side wants to talk to the computer on the right-hand side, it will be sending its traffic or its data to the address of 192.168.1.112 and the other way around. So how do I know what my IP address is? Let's do this exercise together. On your Windows machine, click on the Windows symbol on the bottom left corner and type CMD. This is a shortcut for command prompt. The command prompt is a small piece of software that allows you to interact directly with the operating system. So instead of using the graphical Windows interface, you can type commands here that Windows will interpret and will give you the output directly. The command we're gonna do is ipconfig. This is the command that displays what IP address our machine has. And as you can see here, my IP right now is 192.168.237.132. Keep in mind that if you're following on this exercise, you might have a different IP address than mine. And if you do this exercise on another day, you might get another different IP address because these IP addresses could often change. Right, so now I know what my IP address is, but what if I'm targeting a system on the internet and I want to know what its IP address is? How do I know that? The easiest way to do this is to use the ping utility. Ping is a small piece of software that sends packets to a remote system and waits for a response. It's a diagnostic tool that is mostly used to check if another system is alive or not, or is responding or not. So what we're doing here is we're typing ping google.com, assuming that, for example, we're targeting Google. Obviously we're not, but just for the sake of this exercise. So we type ping google.com, and we see a reply coming from the IP address of Google. So now we know that in my country, Google's IP address is 94.201.252.25. So in theory, this means that if I now open my browser and I copy and paste the IP address in my browser, I should be able to access Google's page. Let's see if that works. Here we go. So as you can see, I can access now google.ae, which is the Google page for my current country of residence. Here's your first mission. Identify your own IP address. Like I did in the exercise using the ipconfig command, identify and note down what your IP address is. Then, identify the IP address of Google in your country. I am being redirected to google.ae, which might be different than the IP address of google.com or google.fr, and so on and so forth. And remember, record your success. Record down the steps you made, take screenshots, write down the answers, because at the end of the course, you're going to be submitting this to us to get a very valuable prize. So now you know what the Internet Protocol or the IP address is. To review very quickly, it's a unique address for every computer on a network. And because the Internet is this huge global network, every computer on the Internet will have its own IP address. Now, there are a couple issues with this. If you look at this picture of a Google data center, you'd see a whole bunch of computers. All these closet-looking things that you can see in this picture, these are racks of computers stacked on top of other computers, stacked on top of other computers. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of computers in this picture. And this is one data center alone. Now imagine that each one of these computers here in the picture would need an IP address. What if Microsoft had these massive data centers as well, and each computer required an IP address? What if Apple? What about the rest of the world? Your university or your school or your home and so on? If every computer on the internet required an IP address, we're gonna be very soon running out of IP addresses. And actually we are. There's a limited number of IP addresses that we can use. Roughly it's 4.3 billion. And right now we're actually running out of IP addresses. And the other question is, what if we don't want our IP to be public? Google has a public IP address that we discovered together, because Google wants everybody to be able to access their website. What if I have my computer on my home network and I don't want it to be publicly available to everybody to access? This is when we use IP addresses that are not made public, i.e. private IP addresses. So a public IP address is any IP address that is directly accessible on the internet. For example, hackersacademy.com would have a public IP address, such as Google, such as Yahoo, such as Microsoft.com, and so on. A private IP address, on the other hand, is not accessible from the internet. So for example, right now, if you're connected to a school network or your home network, your computer would have an IP address that would not be accessible directly on the internet. So if you're connected to a private network right now, your computer would have one IP address from the following pools. These are the pools reserved for private IP addresses. If you want your computer to have an IP address that is not accessible on the internet, your computer would have an IP address that is picked from one of these three different pools. Anything from 192.168.00 to 192.168.255 to 255, which is a little bit over 65,000 IP addresses that you can choose from, or the second batch, which is a little bit over 1 million IP addresses that you can choose from, or the third batch, which is a little bit over 16 million IP addresses that you can choose from. So my IP address, for example, as you saw earlier, is from the first pool of 192.168.x.y. So if we want to take a very high-level bird's eye view of how IP addresses are assigned, let's have a look at this diagram. The globe symbol in the middle resembles the internet, and these 5 devices around it resemble public IP addresses that are connected directly to the internet. So for example, one would be google.com, the other would be Microsoft, Yahoo, Apple, and hackersacademy.com. These are 5 different websites with 5 different public IP addresses that are particularly assigned to them and unique to them. On the outermost circle are the private IP addresses of everybody's home, office, and school network. So all these desktops and laptops and even mobile phones that are not directly connected to the internet would have a private IP address. Right now, other than your desktop or other than your laptop, if your mobile is connected to your wireless router at home, your mobile would have an IP address assigned to it. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to identify at least one other private IP address on your network. The easiest way to do this is if you find what your IP address is and try to increment or decrement by 1. So if, for example, my IP address is 192.168.1.10, I would try to ping 192.168.1.11 or .1.9. Another way to do this is to start from .0 and increment it 1 by 1 until I discover another IP address. So go ahead and try and do that and see how many IP addresses you can discover. And remember to record your success.